Coming in at 5, Goblin Shark. The Goblin Shark is perhaps the ugliest animal in the entire world. Not shaming, just stating facts. Also known as the living fossil, the Goblin Shark lives up to 1,300 feet deep inside the sea. What is terrifying about these creatures is that they can detach their whole mouth from their body in order to get their prey. How f***ing terrifying is that? They can grow up to 3.5 meters and love hunting teleost fish. They have flabby bodies with small fins with nail-like teeth and are quite different from other sharks as they are the strongest looking and, again, perhaps the ugliest sharks in the ocean. They have a pinkish appearance, sometimes red when they are old because blood vessels can be seen through its skin. The camouflage color of its skin helps it hide in plain sight, allowing it to catch prey undetected. They're very rarely seen in the deep oceans and were first seen on the coast of Japan in 1898 by naturalist Alan Alston. Now it is visible in all oceans, but mostly in Brazil, the Gulf of Mexico, France, Portugal, and Senegal. In at 4, fang-toothed fish. Fang-toothed fish are the deepest living fish ever found on Earth. They can survive 5,000 meters below sea level, which is absolutely crazy. The pressure at that level is 500 times than that of the land. Their teeth are in proportion to their body size, making them one of the scariest deep sea creatures we have ever come across. Their eyes are situated on the top of their heads and comparatively smaller in size. Not only that, but they have scales on its skin which are shaped like plates, and their fins are small and spineless. They are a big fan of thriving in oceans with tropical and temperate temperature, and it can go as deep as 5,000 meters and hence one of the deepest living creatures in the entire world. Like me, it avoids sunlight and only goes to the ocean surface during the night. Same. Despite how it looks, it is in fact harmless to humans, so don't fret if you see one during a late night paddle. They are instead a big fan of squid and fish, and locate its prey by detecting chemical signatures of other fish varieties in the water. Coming in at 3, giant squid. This squid is giant, in case the name didn't give it away. They can grow up to 14 meters, which is the equivalent to the size of a 5-story building. Yep, terrifying. More terrifying still, they are so big they can eat small whales. Whales! The first ever image of a giant squid was taken by Japanese researchers in its natural habitat, and it's believed that there are many species of giant squid exist, but as per genetics research. The largest known squid species can be seen in all oceans. However, as of right now, they have only been discovered in the Gulf of Mexico, the Sea of Japan, the Pacific Ocean, Hawaii, the Southern Oceans, and California. Giant squid can grow up to 59 feet in length, making it one of the biggest animals on the entire planet. I hate this so much. While on the topic of appearance, the giant squid has a large head with 8 arms and 2 tentacles used for grabbing prey. Not only that, but it also has an incredibly strong jaw, similar to a parrot beak. The species are a big fan of eating other squid, fish, and shrimp, and according to different researchers, they can also attack and eat small whales, as previously stated. I hate them. In at 2, humpback anglerfish. Right off the bat, I hate anglerfish. I hate their stupid light bulb and their stupid teeth. And this dude is no different. Humpback anglerfish are perhaps the most terrifying deep sea creature you will ever come across, just because of how it looks. The species are grey to dark brown in colour and have a large head with a big crescent shaped mouth, full to the brim with sharp teeth, which are also translucent. What the f? They live up to 2,000 meters below the sea and use their light to see their prey, which is actually an antenna located on its head. They can swallow prey twice their size and use their bioluminescence that produces symbiotic bacteria when in the dark to attract them. Now, the humpback anglerfish is widely distributed in almost all oceans across the world, and more interesting still, the species have a lateral line that can sense the pressure and movements in the surrounding ocean. That's too much power for my liking. Finally, coming in at number 1, frilled shark. Frilled sharks are typically found thousands of feet below surface and most commonly in the Suruga Bay area of Japan. They are very similar to sharks in the sense that they have very dangerous 3-pointed teeth. Known as the living fossil and mostly seen at Atlantic and Pacific Ocean, this guy is just straight up terrifying, and he loves eating bony fish. He has a flattened head and an incredibly large mouth with around 300 teeth arranged in 25 rows pointing in a backward direction. His body is elongated and is brown in colour. Now, typically sharks don't have a nictitating membrane, that is a thin but tough membrane considered as an eyelid that moves horizontally with the eyes. However, this shark has that, and uses it to protect its eyes during potentially dangerous situations. Not only that, but its skeleton also contains less calcium, likely because it lives so deep underwater, which is poor in nutrients.
Number 5. Oarfish. Coming in at the number 5 spot is this terrifying 16-foot long monstrosity hauled out of the ocean by Chilean fishermen, shocking those who learned, like me, that fish can be 5 meters long sometimes. The clip was posted to TikTok, where it went viral almost immediately, sweeping up 10 million views pretty quickly. Most people worried this fish might be a bringer of bad times, and there might be an inkling of truth to that. This fish, called an oarfish, is thought in some cultures to be an omen of impending bad fortune. I mean, I understand it completely. If I picked this thing out of the water, I would not think that I had been blessed by good fortune. In Japanese folklore, this fish is sometimes referred to as Ryogo no Tsukai, translating to the messenger from the sea god's palace, and I'm sure I butchered that pronunciation. I'm so very sorry. It's linked to the legend of Namazu, a giant sea snake which caused earthquakes whenever it would rise. Oarfish live deep in the depths of the sea. And some scientists theorize that they only ever rise nearer to surface level whenever there's a disturbance in the tectonic plates, which would definitely make this fish a bad omen and a bringer of earthquakes. Now the actual oarfish, once you get aside all the legend, terrifying as it might look, is a bit of a gentle giant. It's the largest bony fish in the world, and it isn't much of a predator, preferring to swim around just hoovering up plankton. They barely even have teeth, to be honest, and they don't really pose a threat to humans. Unless you consider scaring the heck out of you a threat. You want to watch more scary sea creature videos? Well, I got great news for you because we have loads upon loads on the channel. Number 4. Green-eyed shark. Now, if the ocean is where all the scariest stuff in the world is hiding, that goes triple for any body of water around Australia, which is home to some of the actual most terrifying entities ever to walk the planet, and swim the planet, and fly the planet. It's where they send the animals that are too hardcore for the rest of the world. An Australian angler, Trapman Bermagee, pulled out this disgusting wretch of a fish, some 2,000 feet beneath the sea. He captioned it, "The face of a deep sea rough-skinned shark." Now, a little bit of a fake Australian accent there, I can't help it. Unsurprisingly, most commenters wanted to point out how disgusting the thing was, which is very similar to what I'm doing now. Now, usually I'm a sucker for green eyes, but not on this leathery little monster. This thing looks like a baseball glove that came to life. I'm not having it. There's actually a lot of debate as to what this little thing is. Some commenters had suggested that it was a cookie cutter shark, which might sound adorable when you hear that. That sounds pretty cute, but I promise you it is not cute at all. A cookie cutter shark is named that because of its jagged mouth, which leaves cookie cutter like imprints on its victims, just like big holes in anything that it's biting at. However, the fisherman pointed out this wasn't a cookie cutter shark. A cookie cutter shark looks absolutely vile, but in a very different way. A cookie cutter shark looks more like a mole rat that was left in the sun for a few weeks, whereas this thing looks like it was grilled before ever being born. Now, another commenter suggested that this shark could be something called an endeavor spur dog shark, which is a mouthful and a half. Now, whatever the creature is, it goes without saying, I want very little to do with this shark. Number 3. Long-nosed chimera. You wouldn't really expect anything horrifying to exist in Newfoundland. It's a very pleasant place. You think it's mostly just chips and Jig's dinner all the way down. Well, for Gary Goodyear, a fisherman out of Templeman, Newfoundland, he pulled this long-nosed chimera out of the water and gave himself quite the shock. His nets went some 2,000 feet down into the water, where he unearthed this long-beaked mystery fish. When he pulled it up, the crew could not believe what they had seen. It was not at all what they were expecting. I have to include this quote from one of the articles because it's too newfie not to include. Goodyear said, "We're hauling away and by I seen this coming around the roller. I said, good God, what in the heck is that?" Now, when he first pulled it up, he wondered at first if it might have been a platypus because of the impressive snoot on the beast. He described this pelagic nightmare's beak as being very rubbery, like cartilage. No one on the boat had any idea what they had found, so they kept the body of the fish and took it to a local fishery in the hopes that someone could properly ID their mystery monster. Luckily, somebody actually knew, and it got correctly identified as a long-nosed chimera, an ancient deep-sea dwelling fish famous for its green eyes and, putting this gently, its monstrous appearance. The reason that its nose felt like cartilage is because the fish is completely cartilage from nose to tail. It's actually boneless. So this fish is a spineless coward. The creature most likely perished as it was being pulled up. An extreme pressure change from being 2,000 feet beneath the sea gave it a serious case of the bends. Maybe was a blessing in disguise, because I'm not sure I'd want to see this thing alive. I'm not sure I'd want to see it thrashing around on the floor of a commercial fishing boat. I think that wouldn't be good for anybody. Number 2. Decorator crab. Our next spot comes to us all the way from Thailand. Some local fishermen in Koh Yao Noi pulled up their nets while fishing for crabs and discovered they'd brought up an alien-looking creature with them that mystified them. They couldn't identify this thing. Take a look at this creepy little crawly. Kinda looks like a spider that's got a good fashion sense, got really into accessorizing. But it almost kinda looks like it shouldn't be moving at all. Like it's just some garbage that got cursed into being alive, or maybe some seaweed that developed sentience. The fishermen were understandably pretty puzzled by this thing, so they decided to post a video of the then unidentified critter, hoping to get some answers, and for once, the internet was actually helpful. The creature was correctly identified as a decorator crab, which is not something I'd heard of before this video, but I am so glad I learned about it, and I am even happier that I can pass it on to you. A decorator crab gets its name for its habit of using whatever it can scavenge around its environment to make into camouflage from predators. Now the really cool thing is that they'll use literally anything they can find. Debris, garbage, they'll even use little bits of other animals in a gruesome manner like fins or parts of a crab shell. If it can be attached to it in some way, a decorator crab will stick it to itself. They're covered in tiny velcro-like hairs that allow them to attach their findings easily. I would love having that. It would save me so much time getting dressed. They've been recorded chewing on things like kelp or seaweed to break them down into more easily attachable accessories. Now most of the creatures on this list have been weird and scary and kind of look horrifying, and I'm not gonna lie, the decorator crab kind of looks pretty scary too, but I absolutely adore the decorator crab. It is showing up every other creature in the ocean when it comes to outfits. I love the garbage costume. It's given camp in a very good way. This thing is like a crab Lady Gaga, and I love it. Number 1, Ghost Shark. Roman Fedortsov routinely entertains his 600,000 Instagram followers with pictures of all the strange creatures he fishes up while sailing around Murmansk, a port city in Russia. His Instagram is a treasure trove of scary undersea finds, and I absolutely recommend that you toss him a follow if you're into this sort of thing, as he's kind of the head honcho for it. This video could easily just have been 5 things that he fished out himself. Nobody is pulling out weird things the way Roman is. But with so many to choose from, I had a tough time, but I landed on this here fish, sometimes called Frankenstein's fish, due to the stitches all over its body looking like it's been sewn together from the bodies of several other fishes. It's also been referred to as a rat fish, a ghost shark, a spook fish, but officially they're known as ghost chimeras. I like that it's got nothing but scary nicknames. These things are bad news from teeth to tail. They have a spiny dorsal fin that's poisonous to the touch. It's got a mouth of rat-like teeth that helps it grind down anything it catches, crushing its prey in its jaws. Usually goes after things like crabs or prawns, so the rat teeth help pulverize the shells. These little things also have an inherent ability to detect the electric fields produced by other creatures, and I wish I knew even the littlest bit about biology because this fish sounds like it's magic. Fish also sounds overpowered, not gonna lie. Now I think it's a little treat. We ought to have a little slideshow at the end of just a bunch of Fedortsov's weirdest catches, and I'll just react to them. Ready? Okay, here we go, lightning round. Who would make this? Why would a creature evolve like this? I guarantee you this thing looks cuter as sashimi. That is a face not even Mother Nature could love, if that even is a face. You know what, this one I'm actually kind of coming around to. I wouldn't touch it, I wouldn't order it, but I kind of like it. Number 5, Goblin Shark. Under the sea is where nature starts to really let its creative juices flow. It's just an abstract world of tentacles, feelers, and razor-sharp teeth down there. Like a Jackson Pollock, but for things that'll bite you. I know that little crab said it's better down where it's wetter, but I just don't know if I agree if things like the Goblin Shark are swimming around freely. I know that sounds kind of like I have a strong opinion about these things, and I do. The Goblin Shark is probably one of the scariest looking living creatures on the planet. The translucent skin really isn't helping matters. I mean, seriously. Google, try and find a cute photo of one of these things, even a little baby. Every single picture of it makes it look like something H.R. Giger would look at and think, maybe tone it down a bit. The Goblin Shark gets its name from its grotesque appearance. Sorry to all our Goblin Shark viewers, it's nothing personal. Its elongated nose and its unique unhinged jaws full of nail-like teeth. That nose isn't just for show either. It actually serves as a little prey detector for the Goblin Shark. The nose is filled with electroreceptors that allow it to pick up tiny electric fields of prey. It sneaks around the seabed using that little food finder to sniff out its next meal. Electrically charged tracking sharks with monstrous teeth. Wasn't that literally a joke in one of the Austin Powers movies? Goblin sharks actually can't even close their mouths fully, with their teeth always being visible, just to let you know what they're packing. I think as a general rule of thumb, you should stay away from any creature scientifically named after a goblin. That's advice that has done me well, that's advice that has served Spider-Man well, and I am passing that on to you. Having a good time so far? It would really make my day if you tossed a little old subscribe our way. Number 4, the Pacific Black Dragon. Now, this is an entry I could probably include solely on a name basis. You wouldn't even need to see a picture of it, and you just trust that the Pacific Black Dragon is a scary looking fish. However, I'm a visual learner, and you're watching a YouTube video, so we're going to include several pictures of one of Mother Nature's most precious little abhorrent monstrosities. Take a look at this thing. You would be forgiven for thinking that this thing popped out of that one guy's chest in Alien, because it looks way more like a chest burster than it does a fish. And for those keeping track at home, that's my second reference to the 1979 sci-fi classic, and it probably won't be the last in this video. This angry little noodle, occasionally referred to as the Black Sea Dragon, gets its name from the fact that its skin absorbs 99.95% of the light in its habitat, which happens to be anywhere from 1,600,000 feet to 6,000 feet below the depths. Meaning this thing is dark. It hides in plain sight in the pitch black water, letting the bait hanging from its chin attract prey. Smaller fish swim up to what they think is something appetizing, and then the last thing they ever see is two beady little glowing eyes and then nothing. While this little fish is one of the smallest monsters on our list, I don't trust a fish that learned how to fish. There's something traitorous about that behavior. And honestly, maybe it's shallow, but I just can't move on from how truly horrifying this thing looks. I'm vapid, I can admit that. And I would love to see the Megalodon snarf this thing up. Number 3, Japanese spider crab. How do spiders manage to get into everything? Doesn't matter where you are, you will find a spider crawling around in your apartment, up your shower, on your walls, on the toilet seat. I thought we would have been safe at least in the ocean, but I really should have known better. Introducing the Japanese spider crab, a creature pulled directly from my nightmares and my therapy sessions. These things look like they crawled out of the dankest depths and can grow up to 12 feet long. They can grow up to be 40 pounds, and if somehow one of its many legs gets severed, they can just regrow those no problem when they molt next. They're not just one of the longest crabs in the world, they also have possibly the longest lifespan of any crab, with a spider crab living to up to 100 years old. You're telling me there's a crabby longlegs walking around out there who was born in the 20s, still kicking about on the ocean floor, moving his little bowler hat, spinning his little crabby cane? Now, a little bit of cursory digging taught me 2 things about the spider crab to put my fears on ice. Apparently, these monsters, despite their outward appearance, are completely benevolent and are more content to scavenge around the ocean floor looking for scraps than they are ever likely to interact with a human, and are actually considered to be quite lazy by crab standards. Apparently, they taste amazing and are considered a delicacy in some parts of Japan. I know for me, a key part of exposure therapy and getting over any of my fears is to eat my fears slathered in a buttery reduction, prepared over rice, maybe with a nice soy sauce. I'm looking at more pictures, and maybe I was totally wrong about the Japanese spider crab. I'm also very tall in a way that concerns people, and I'm very lazy, usually scavenging for my next meal as well. Although I am hoping that my next meal is a spider crab sushi combo. Number 2, stargazer. The stargazer is a fish that's got a face only Mother Nature could love, and even then, it looks like she might not be that generous. This thing kinda looks like if you buried a pug up to its face and then left it out in the sun for a few months. I don't think it's even too much of a stretch to say this might very well be the ugliest fish on the planet. Now, it's not a crime to be the ugliest fish on the planet, and you certainly wouldn't make a list of terrifying creatures just for being a little bit ugly. The stargazer earned its place on this list for also being one of the meanest fishes out there. It's always the ones you least expect. The stargazer has defensive capabilities that make it sound a lot more like it's a Pokemon than a fish. These things will bury themselves in the ocean floor, turning themselves into a little trap and then using their massive mouths as a vacuum and sucking their unsuspecting prey right up. And if that wasn't enough of an evolutionary selling point for you, the stargazer also has electric organs at the top of it, which transmit electric shocks to predators. That's a nasty little guy. And the name stargazer comes from the fact that when it's burrowing, it buries itself down, and the only thing peering out is its ugly little eyes peering upwards at the sky, or the stars. I gotta say, I got absolutely no love for these things. I like that they're very ugly, that's charming, but the rest of it, no. They're like scaly little zappy landmines. Number 1, Portuguese Man O War. Of all the things on this list, the Portuguese Man O War seems like it's the most not from this planet. It looks beautifully ethereal, like something you'd see floating around in the background in a Star Wars planet, or maybe hanging out with the blue things from Avatar. It's a truly cosmic looking wonder of nature. However, it is anything but. The first clue should be the fact that it is named after a 17th century battleship. It looks a bit like a jellyfish, but in actuality, it's a strange little colonial organism made up of smaller organisms called zooids. See, this already sounds like I'm talking about an alien, a zooid. You gonna look me in the eyes and tell me a zooid is real? This thing actually isn't even an animal per se, but 3 organisms in a trench coat trying to sneak into the movies. The main zooid is a gas-filled translucent sac, which coincidentally is what my 10th grade gym teacher used to call me to motivate me to run around the track faster. The gas-filled sac allows the colony to float. The Man O War has no means of movement, instead having to rely on the currents of the ocean to direct it around. Real go-with-the-flow type of organism. Not a bad attitude, to be honest. Now the next zooid, oh, I am never gonna get used to saying that, are the tentacles, which are really the star of the show here. The tentacles on a Man O War reach lengths of up to 165 feet. Now I'll run that by you in case you heard that, fainted, and didn't quite catch what I said. Get up off the floor. Their tentacles can get up to 165 feet long. That's really long. The tentacles, which mind you, carry a sting like a jellyfish's. It's been known to cause paralysis, is enough to kill a fish, and has been on some occasions enough to be lethal to humans. One Redditor recounts a painful story of a vacation to Cuba, strolling a beach and seeing what they thought was a plastic bag floating in the water. They then went to pick it up, and as they described, the next thing I knew, I woke up in the hospital in a vinegar bath with a morphine drip, a team of doctors extracting the tentacles that were stuck into my hand. That's enough to keep me away from the water for a bit and maybe prevent myself from ever doing a good deed, try to pick up some litter. I feel like even the Megalodon might want to be careful around this strange monster.
Kicking off at number 5, the Kaz-2, which perhaps is one of the most terrifying modern instances of the term ghost ship and one of the most profoundly tragic unsolved mysteries of the deep blue sea. The Kaz-2, which was publicly dubbed the Ghost Yacht, was a 9.8 meter catamaran which was found drifting listlessly 88 nautical miles off the northeastern coast of Australia on the 20th of April 2007. The 3 men aboard, who were all residents of Perth in Western Australia, were all incredibly experienced sailors. They were 56-year-old Derek Batten and brothers Peter Tunstall and James Tunstall, who were 69 and 63 respectively. Their whereabouts still remains a mystery to this day, and the fate of these 3 men perhaps may never be known. What made it even stranger is that when the Kaz-2 was eventually found by the Coast Guard, there were no signs of distress, no signs of boat damage, or even a struggle between the 3 men. It was as if they just vanished out of thin air. Coffee cups were left out and all the life jackets on board remained stowed away, indicating that the trio never felt at risk. In an even more curious turn of events, rescue teams discovered video footage of the 3 men on a handheld camera, seemingly hours before they disappeared. It showed them fishing, relaxing in the sun with the motor off, and offered no clues as to how these 3 experienced sailors disappeared at sea. Although an inquiry was later drawn, no definitive conclusions were ever reached, and only theories remain about the ultimate fate of the Kaz-2. Coming in at number 4, the Lady Loverbond. Of course, no list would be complete without a good old sea shanty of jilted lovers and ghostly revenge. As the legend goes, the Lady Loverbond was a schooner that is alleged to have been wrecked on the Goodwin Sands just off the southern coast of Kent on the 13th of February 1749. But if you ask any old sailor worth their salt, they'll tell you that it just so happens to have a habit of reappearing every 50 or so years as a ghost ship. As the story goes, the captain of the ship, a man named Simon Reed, had just been married to his bride Annetta and was celebrating the joyous occasion with a cruise bound for Oporto in Portugal. Now, it is high time to mention that a long-standing sailor's superstition was that back in the day it was grave bad luck to bring a woman on board, and in many ways the legend of the Lady Loverbond is a cautionary tale that exemplifies that fact. According to the tale, the ship's first mate, a man named John Rivers, was a rival for the hand of the captain's young wife, and in a jealous fit of rage he killed the crewman manning the ship's wheel and steered the vessel into the treacherous Goodwin Sands, killing absolutely everyone on board. And if you're asking me, that is a stark overreaction. But nevertheless, since that fateful day in 1749, the Lady Loverbond has been sighted on numerous occasions with an ethereal, ghostly glow, eternally bound to wander the ocean. Next up at number 3, the Mary Celeste, which in fact may very well be the world's most infamous ghost ship, as well as one of the longest enduring mysteries of the 7 seas. Built in Spain Spencer's Island, Nova Scotia in 1861 and launched under the new name of the Mary Celeste in 1868, this merchant brigantine sailed uneventfully across the Atlantic for years as a seaworthy, efficient vessel. It wasn't until her fateful voyage in 1872 where the true ghostly legend began, which has since gathered theories that vary from submarine earthquakes, water spouts, an attack by a giant squid, and even paranormal intervention. No one will truly know the ultimate fate of the Mary Celeste, with every single soul on board never being seen or heard from again, which is a terrifying thought in itself, isn't it? The Mary Celeste was discovered adrift and deserted just off the coast of the Azores Islands on December 5th, 1872. It was a Canadian vessel, the De Gratia, which found her in a disheveled but seaworthy condition under partial sail and with one lifeboat missing. The last entry in the ship's log was dated 10 days earlier, which detailed the vessel's last known location, before these mysterious, infamous events unfolded. On board was the ship's captain, Benjamin S. Briggs, his wife Sarah, and their 2-year-old daughter Sophia, and 8 seasoned crew members, all veterans of the sea. It poses the question, what dire threat did the Mary Celeste face that caused a highly experienced captain to abandon his ship? Nothing was stolen, all of the crew's possessions and cargo were exactly as they'd left them, but in all likelihood, we may never know. Swinging in at number 2, the Flying Dutchman. Of course, this legendary vessel couldn't not make this list. The ghost ship that can tragically never make port, doomed to navigate the perilous ocean for eternity. In actual fact though, the Flying Dutchman has had such an impact on nautical culture that it's easy to overlook the treacherous tale of its origin. It is thought that the legend of the Flying Dutchman first originated from the 17th century golden age of the Dutch East India Trade Company, a mega corporation that had a stranglehold monopoly on the Dutch spice trade that ran throughout the 16 and 1700s, where tale was told of a Dutch man of war that was lost just off the Cape of Good Hope. Purportedly, every soul on board perished after being ravaged by a violent tempest. The following few days, numerous other trading ships reported seeing a ghostly, ethereal vessel out in the foggy mist of the ocean, flying the exact same colours as the Dutch vessel. Since then, the Flying Dutchman has gathered notoriety as the worst omen you could ever hope for of a phantom ship that heralds the demise of an entire crew, with sightings continuing all the way into the 19th and 20th centuries. In fact, perhaps the most recognised sighting was by King George V himself during a 3-year voyage in 1881 just off the coast of Australia. He noted in his personal log that 13 people had seen the same glowing Flying Dutchman in the early hours of the morning, and later in the day the ordinary crewman who had spotted the vessel fell from the foremast and, in his words, was smashed to atoms. It's a little bit worrying, that one, eh? And finally, our number 1 spot, the Orang Medan. And where do we even begin with the bizarre, perplexing legend of the Orang Medan, perhaps the most terrifyingly unexplainable instances of a ghostly shipwreck in history? But, well, the leading physical theory of the Orang Medan may be even more horrifying than it first appears. As the legend goes, at some time in June 1947, an American vessel by the name of the Silver Star picked up several distress calls from a nearby Dutch merchant ship, the Orang Medan. A radio operator aboard the troubled vessel sent a message in Morse code. In rushed, confused dots and dashes, it read, "We float. All officers, including the captain, dead in chart room and on the bridge. Probably whole of crew dead." And then a few moments later, after even more confused dots and frantic dashes, 2 words came through very clearly. "I die." Then silence. Nothing more was heard of them. But well, when the Silver Star eventually located and boarded the apparently undamaged and otherwise seaworthy Orang Medan, what they found absolutely horrified them. Every single person aboard was found dead, sprawled on their backs, frozen in fear, with their mouths gaping open and their eyes staring straight ahead. There were no survivors, but even more terrifying, apparently no signs of injury or foul play. Just as the Silver Star crew was preparing to tow the ship to a nearby port, a fire broke out in the Orang Medan, which shortly exploded before finally sinking into the depths. Since this horrifying incident, theories have ranged from the vessel carrying a highly dangerous chemical nerve agent to an entanglement with the CIA after the result of a secret experiment to an unprovoked alien assault. But if you haven't already sensed a theme with this particular list, it seems that we may never know.
Number 5 on this list is the Loch Ness Monster. Nessie, as many people refer to this creature, is said to be a huge, long-necked, almost dinosaur-looking creature that lives in Scotland. This creature of the deep specifically resides in Loch Ness, a 37-kilometer loch located in the Scottish Highlands. The legend of this sea creature went worldwide back in 1933. A photo was released to the public showing a strange creature's head protruding from the water of Loch Ness. The world went into a frenzy after that photo got out and the legend of Nessie began. Ever since that point, many sightings have been reported, other pictures have been taken, and even sonar readings have indicated this creature swimming in the loch. All of that being said though, we've never had indisputable proof that Nessie's real. Well, I'm here to tell you that Nessie is real, but maybe not how you expect. New Zealand scientists have taken samples of the water in Loch Ness and have studied the DNA that they found in it. Professor Neil Gamel, a geneticist, is quoted saying, "Well, our data doesn't reveal their size, but the sheer quantity of the material that says we can't discount the possibility that there may be giant eels in Loch Ness. Therefore, we can't discount the possibility that what people see and believe is the Loch Ness Monster might be a giant eel." So, the Loch Ness Monster, as we understand it, might not be real, but potentially this loch is full of giant eels that resemble all of the features that Nessie is reported as having. Maybe this is why we've had such a hard time proving this myth, because for years, people have been looking for the wrong thing. I really like the legend of the Loch Ness Monster and honestly want it to be true, but if it had to be giant eels, then I think I could accept that as well. Number 4 on this list is the USS Stein Monster. The USS Stein was a Knox-class destroyer ship in the United States Navy. The ship was eventually decommissioned from the American Navy and was transferred to the Mexican Navy in the 90s. That wasn't before it was attacked by a massive sea monster though. In 1978, the USS Stein was attacked by an unknown entity which we now refer to as the USS Stein Monster. This monster was said to have been a giant, with some people estimating its size up to 150 feet in length. The ship was sailing in the Pacific Ocean when it was attacked. Technical difficulties with the ship started going wrong and eventually they brought it back into the port. Upon inspection, the sonar system was completely damaged. There were cuts and gashes over 8% of the ship, with some of them being massively deep. They also found suction cups like those of a squid attached to the ship. After investigation of the suction cups and the gashes, it became clear that what they were attacked by isn't your standard animal. Even a giant squid would have had a hard time doing what the monster did to this ship. Ever since that point, the legend of the USS Stein Monster has grown. Obviously, this monster has to be real because it has actually attacked a ship. Sadly, we don't know a whole lot about it though. In truth, we know less about what's on the ocean floor than we do about the surface of the moon. So it's very possible that a creature we aren't familiar with yet is dwelling down there. Number 3 on this list is Megalodon. Would this list really be complete if I didn't include the ancient king of the sea? Eleanor Imster writes, "Scientists think that Megalodon looked like a stockier version of the great white shark, with strong, thick teeth built for grabbing prey and breaking bones. Regarded as one of the largest and most powerful predators who have ever lived, fossil remains of Megalodon suggest that this giant shark reached a length of about 60 feet. Their large jaws could exert a bite force up to 24,000 to 41,000 pounds. That is a massive, massive animal, guys. Multiple times bigger than the great white sharks we have today. This thing was so big that it would actually eat entire whales. Now, many myths have surrounded Megalodon and its existence since scientists first brought this mammoth of the sea up. Estimates say that Megalodon went extinct roughly 2.6 million years ago, but some people don't buy into that theory. For quite a while now, the legend of a giant shark still living amongst the ocean has had a lot of people wondering if it's possible. If Megalodon was still alive, is it possible that we still wouldn't know about it? How could we miss a creature this giant? How many of them would there be left in the waters? There are surely a lot of questions that come up if you believe Megalodon is still a reality. If this creature was still alive, then people think the Marianas Trench is where it's located, a place so deep and uncharted that it's hard for us to know for sure what's down there. I'm personally not convinced this creature still roams the ocean, but comment down below your thoughts. Is Megalodon still alive? What do you think? Number 2 on this list is the Kraken. The Kraken is one of the largest sea monsters that is said to exist. It all started in Nordic folklore many hundreds of years ago when sailors told tale of a massive beast that preys upon the waters of Norway, Greenland, and Iceland. This fearsome beast was said to pull entire ships to their doom and eat every human on board. The first account of the legend was in 1180 by the King of Norway at the time. Since then, sightings of the creature and lore surrounding its capabilities have grown through the years. Fiction writers and movie makers have also latched onto this creature and included it in many stories. As cool as it would be though, to our current knowledge, the Kraken itself isn't real. However, something similar to it definitely is. The giant squid. The giant squid is a massive squid that's said to be able to grow up to 13 meters in length. Sightings have even put this creature at 20 meters before, but those have never been proven. Even if 13 meters is the maximum length, that's still a large animal and something that would frighten anyone if you're seeing it for the first time. Many experts believe that the legend of the Kraken happened when Norwegian sailors stumbled upon this giant squid, and rather than name it a giant squid, they called it the Kraken. As time went on, the legend spiraled out of control until we got this massive sea monster which attacks boats. Now, even though that might be a bit far from the truth, could I believe that there was one giant squid that was potentially bigger than the rest? Absolutely I could. I could also believe that this giant squid might have attacked a ship or two in its time and maybe even brought one down. If it did do all of that, then there really wouldn't be any difference between this squid and the Kraken. Either way, if you see a massive sea creature with tentacles coming after you, I'd just swim the opposite direction. Number 1 on this list is the Hook Island sea monster. It was first spotted by Robert Le Sarec in 1964 off of Hook Island, and after he saw the monster, he went on to describe it in detail. He said, "It was only when we got to within 20 feet of the serpent that we could see its head clearly. The head was large, about 4 feet from top to bottom, with jaws about 4 feet wide. The lower jaw was flat like that of a sandfish. The skin was smooth but rather dull, brownish black in color. The eyes seemed pale green, almost white. The skin looked more like that of a shark than an eel. There were no apparent scales. Nor did we see any parasites around. We supposed the flexible tail would have shaken any off. There were no fins or spines, nor were there any apparent breathing openings, although there must have been some. Perhaps we didn't see them because our attention was focused mainly on the creature's menacing mouth, the inside of which was whitish. The teeth appeared to be small. A fragment of some dark substance hung from the upper row of teeth, possibly a fish. As the monster was lying on the sandy bottom, we could not see the color of its belly. The creature was about 90 feet long. Behind the head, the body was about 2 feet 4 inches thick and remained that way for about 25 feet. Then it gradually tapered into a whip-like tail. The general color of the body was black with 1 foot wide brownish rings every 5 feet. The first starting just behind the head. The skin was smooth but dull. So that's his description, and after he and his family saw it, he took some pictures of the creature to prove his claims. We have to remember that these pictures were taken in 1964 and doctoring them would have been far more difficult back then than it is today. I also tend to believe this claim more than most based on the level of detail he described the beast. Obviously it was a pretty jarring experience if he was able to describe the creature in that much detail. Since the claims, people have researched Hook Island for this monster, but with no luck. Hopefully one day we can spot this monster again and know for certain that it truly exists.
Kicking off at number 5, the SS Beichimo. Now, although many tales of ghost ships and their legend are mired in murky mystery and spotty historical records, this one is perhaps one of the most well-documented cases of a ghost ship in nautical history. Built in Sweden in the year 1914, the SS Beichimo was used as a trading vessel for routes between Hamburg and Sweden in and throughout the First World War. After the war though, it was shipped over to Canada where it was employed by the Hudson's Bay Company, carrying cargo throughout the Arctic region. There, on October 1st, 1931, during a routine voyage, a devastating storm blew in and the Beichimo was trapped in pack ice just off the coast of Alaska. The crew quickly abandoned ship, traveling over the ice to the nearest town of Barrow, Alaska, where they took shelter. Several days later, after the storm had subsided, the crew returned to retrieve their precious cargo, only to find that the SS Beichimo had disappeared. Her captain decided that she must have broken up during the storm and sunk, but a few days later, an Inuit seal hunter told the captain that he had spotted the Beichimo nearly 50 miles away from their initial position. As the story goes, the Beichimo didn't sink at all, and for several decades after her abandonment, she sailed the Arctic coast completely unmanned. In fact, the SS Beichimo was seen on numerous occasions throughout the following century, and several crews even managed to board her. In fact, the last recorded sighting was by a group of Inuit in 1969, a staggering 38 years after she was abandoned. Her ultimate fate? No one knows, but it's safe to say that somewhere out there in the frozen north, the SS Beichimo is still sailing. Next up at number 4, the Jenny. Now this one is a little bit murkier to say the least, and historical accounts have varied from person to person. One thing always remains the same though: if the accounts are true, then this nautical tale is perhaps one of the most bleakest and most despairing cases of a crew being lost at sea. As the story goes, the Jenny, an English schooner that set sail from its home port of the Isle of Wight in 1822, became frozen in an ice barrier just off the Drake Passage sometime in its voyage in 1823. Nearly a decade later, in 1840, the stark remains of the ship had been dislodged by the ice, only to be discovered by a nearby whaling ship. As some accounts tell, when the crew first saw the ship, they saw 7 figures standing to attention on the main deck, and so thought that the vessel was manned. As they got closer though, they discovered the grim truth. The 7 figures standing to attention were in fact frozen in place, turned to ice by the Arctic cold. Things only got worse from there though, and as the crew of the whaling ship explored the vessel, they found more and more bodies frozen in time deeper below the deck. As some reports go, as the crew came to the captain's cabin, they found him frozen in place with a pen in his hand. The final note written in his log read May 4th, 1823. No food for 71 days. I am the only one left alive. Yeah, spooky stuff. Coming in at number 3, the SS Valencia. Now this one's a little bit more interesting to say the least, because it's a verified fact that the wreckage of the SS Valencia can still be seen to this day, scattered along the beach and rocky shoreline of Vancouver Island's West Coast Trail. After the ship struck a reef during a storm in 1906, the wreckage of the SS Valencia was considered to be the worst maritime disaster along the western North American coast, otherwise known as the Graveyard of the Pacific. The Valencia was a small ship, a passenger steamer that had a long history of carrying both passengers, cargo and troops, but at the time of her ruin she was operating as a tour boat, often running routes from San Francisco and up to Seattle. During the wreckage, tragically 136 souls were lost, with rescue efforts unable to access the Valencia in the ravaging storm. But our ghostly tale lies with those that tried to escape. You see, as the legend goes, in panic the crew launched all of the Valencia's lifeboats, going against the captain's orders, all of which went horribly wrong. 3 flipped on descent, dozens more capsized after reaching the water, and the last one disappeared out into the waves. Since the disaster of the SS Valencia, countless sailors and fishermen have reported sightings of these lifeboats listlessly floating upon the water during particularly calm days at sea. As some of the tales go, these lifeboats are still filled with the skeletal remains of the lost souls of the SS Valencia. Next up at number 2, the Copenhagen. And it's quite the title really, because the Copenhagen is considered by most to be one of the greatest maritime mysteries of the modern era, with only whispers, rumours and speculation as to its ultimate fate. Built for the Danish East Asiatic Trading Company in 1921, it was the world's largest sailing ship at the time, and primarily served as a sail training vessel for young cadets. In the eyes of many, it was the most impressive sailing ship ever built. However, as the story goes, on September 21st, 1928, the Copenhagen departed from northern Jutland for Buenos Aires on its 10th and ultimately final voyage. A total of 75 people were aboard, and the journey was planned to span all the way to Melbourne, Australia, and then back to Europe. But tragically, as we know, it was never seen again. The thing was though, the captain of the ship, Hans Andersen, was renowned for going long periods at sea without sending any messages, and so it wasn't until nearly 6 months later that the Danish company sent a search party. No wreckage or remains have ever been found. However, following the next several years of the Copenhagen's disappearance, there were a number of highly reputable sightings of a 5-masted ship that fit perfectly its description. In July of 1930, the crew of an Argentine freighter cited what they referred to as a phantom ship during a gale. Their captain noted in his records that this may be the Wrath of the Copenhagen. Dozens of stories and tales have perpetuated around the ultimate fate of the Copenhagen, but the truth is, we may never know. In all likelihood though, it's still out there, somewhere, floating on the endless tide. And finally, coming in at number 1 spot, the Seabird. And this story is the literal definition of a ghost ship, and one of the most saltiest sea yarns that I've heard spun in a while. Although this one has a few more twists and turns that you may not have first seen coming. As the legend goes, in the year 1750, a vessel named the Seabird was idling off the coast of Newport Harbour in Rhode Island, and had quickly attracted quite a crowd on the shore due to its elaborate craftsmanship. Soon enough though, the crowd of onlookers noticed that there was something strange about the Seabird. There was no one manning the ship, not a a soul in sight. As the legend goes, several moments later, the ship, as if by a supernatural wind, perfectly sailed itself through the rough breakers of the beach, gently landing on the nearby Easton's beach. There, a few brave souls boarded the vessel, only to find the seabird completely deserted, save for a boiling kettle on the stove, and strangely enough, breakfast already prepared at the table. Now, some accounts state that a group of fishermen had passed the seabird a few hours before and had even spoken to the captain themselves. Where had the crew gone? What had happened in the few hours that had passed since their last sighting? The truth of it is that no one may ever know, and such is the nature of ghostly tales from the sea. But, well, this is where things get a little stranger still, and take this final caveat with a pinch of sea salt. But as the legend goes, decades later, an old sailor reported to a New England journalist his deepest, darkest secret. In a fit of rage, he had murdered his entire crew just before making port, throwing their bodies into the ocean. And the name of that ship? Well, the Seabird, of course. Kicking off at number 5, the Caliuche. And for this first foray into these particular ghost ships that haunt the sea, we're going to be heading over to the mythologies of Chile and the many legends that have been built around its coastal landscape. One of those, according to Chilean legend, is that of the Caliuche, a large ghost ship that sails the seas of Chiloé, a small island just off the coast, where it only ever appears at night. The ship itself is said to appear as beautiful, cast in a bright white light, an enormous vessel with 3 masts and 5 sails each. It is said that when the Caliuche appears, it is always at night and always full of lights, with the sounds of a great party and a feast on board. Quickly though, it disappears, plunging back beneath the murky depths. Interestingly enough though, although this vessel is said to be similar to the Flying Dutchman, there is a boatload of mythology relating to this particular legend. One of these versions claims that the vessel is crewed by the drowned, souls lost at sea, who are brought to the ship by 3 mythological figures in Chilean legend. 2 sisters, one of them the Sirena Charlotta, a type of mermaid, and the other the Pincoya, a type of water spirit said to protect the Chilean coast. And then their brother, the Pincoy, their male counterpart, who has the body of a sea lion. It's pretty cool. Once aboard, the perished souls can resume their existence in an eternal reverie of adventure on the high seas. However, there is a much more sinister version of this legend, which states that the crew of the Caliuche instead sailed the Chiloé archipelago, luring fishermen and sailors toward it with an enchanting music to enslave them as part of their crew for eternity, where they are twisted and then contorted and put to work in their afterlife. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I prefer the first one, actually. Swinging in at number 4, the Eliza Battle. And for this one, we're pinching the parameters of the 7 seas, and instead we're taking a look at one of the most notorious maritime disasters that, instead of on an ocean, occurred on a river. The Tombigbee River, to be precise, a stretch of water that runs between Columbus, Mississippi and Mobile, Alabama. And here we have the legend of the phantom steamboat of the Tombigbee. Back in 1852, one of the largest river steamboats constructed at the time, the Eliza Battle, was put into service between the 2 southern states. During one particularly cold February in the winter of 1858, after the Eliza Battle had departed the city of Columbus, the ship made its way downriver, stopping on the way at Pickensville, Gainesville, Demopolis and several other small river landings. By the time that the steamboat had left off at Demopolis though, it was filled to the rafters with passengers, and not only passengers but also over 1,200 bales of cotton to be ferried to the final stop. Now, although it roughly still remains a complete mystery, around 2 AM on March the 1st, 1858, about 30 miles downriver from Demopolis, the crew of the Eliza Battle awoke, startled to discover that the cotton bales on the main deck were on fire. Flames soared and quickly engulfed the ship's hull, soon spreading out of control despite the frigid temperatures attributed to the odd, gusty evening. The boat continued onward though, the entirety of the exterior completely engulfed in flames and cut off from their lifeboats. The passengers, many of them who had awoken dressed in their night clothes, were forced to plunge into the icy river below. Now, some of them survived, mainly by floating atop the remaining cotton bales, but all in all, over 33 people lost their lives, both crew and passengers included. The Eliza Battle quickly sank beneath the water, the wreckage of which still lingers at the bottom of the Tombigbee River. It's said that on a particularly cold and windy night, the Eliza Battle will emerge from the icy fog engulfed in flames, once again a warning sign of an oncoming ill omen. Next up at number 3, the fire ship of Baie de Chaleur. Which, I mean, Come on guys, that's probably the most awesome sounding title to anything on this historical list, right? The fireship of Baie des Chaleurs sounds like something that Geralt of Rivia himself would sail down to Skellig after a summer in Toussaint, but whatever, that's by the by, because this vessel in question actually takes us over to the eternally autumnal eastern tones of New Brunswick, Canada. Now the fireship of Baie des Chaleurs is also more commonly referred to as the Chaleur Phantom or the Phantom Ship, and it often takes the form of a series of ghost lights just before a storm, appearing as a large three-mast galley. Now the actual mechanics of this phenomenon are dubiously debated, and many believe it's caused to be down to either the weather phenomenon of St. Elmo's fire or an undersea release of natural gas after a patch of rotting vegetation just off the New Brunswick coast. I mean, that's a completely different story entirely, but what we're concerned with is the actual origin of the fireship, the history of which is equal parts tragic and gruesome. As the legend goes, back in 1501, a Portuguese captain had spent a year pillaging the coast of Baie des Chaleurs, capturing Mi'kmaq natives for the slave trade. However, his cutthroat agenda was miscalculated, as a year later, when he returned to the region on his second voyage, he was captured, tortured and killed by the Mi'kmaq people in revenge for their kidnapped tribesmen. The legend didn't end there though, because a year later, the brother of the Portuguese captain sailed to the bay in search of his missing sibling, and upon seeing the same flags, the Mi'kmaq people attacked the ship, setting it ablaze whilst it was moored in the bay. Cut off, burning and with certain death facing them, the sailors swore to haunt the bay for 1,000 years as their blazing fireship sank into the Bay of Chaleur. Now, whilst later both Mi'kmaq and Portuguese casualties washed up on the shores of the island, the bay itself is said to be haunted by those that perished, often appearing as distraught sailors and warriors, their flesh burnt by the fireship. Swinging in at number 2, the Princess Augusta. And on the topic of ghostly phenomenon, this particular apparition is perhaps one of the most well documented ghost ships of the 18th century, although the actual history behind it is shrouded in intrigue. Although the folklore account of this particular vessel is based upon the historical wreck of the Princess Augusta, a ship that sailed out of Rotterdam in August 1738 under the command of Captain George Long, in more modern records it is commonly referred to as the Palatine, where the Palatine Light, the apparition in question, famously gets its name. And the reason for that is down to the nature of the ship. Alongside 14 of his crew, Captain Long's directive was to transport 240 German immigrants from the Palatinate region of the Rhineland to build a new life for themselves in Philadelphia. However, we know that this is the tale of a ghost ship, and from the offset, their vessel was afflicted with some terribly tragic luck. Not long after passing through the Atlantic, the Princess Augusta's water supply was contaminated, causing a fever and flux to spread through the ship, killing 200 of its passengers, half the crew and the captain himself. The ship's first mate, Andrew Brooke, quickly took command as the survivors leapt out of the frying pan and into the fire, getting hit by severe storms that pushed the ship far off course to the north. They then endured 3 months of extreme weather and dwindling supplies, when eventually they emerged shipwrecked in Block Island, not far from Rhode Island. Here the tale splits, but one thing is certain: Andrew Brooke, the first mate and commanding captain, took what remained of his crew and rowed ashore without once looking back at the cursed ship. It is said that some of the passengers survived, aided by the Block Islanders, but little to nothing is known about those that survived the entire voyage. As the legend goes, the Princess Augusta was set alight from the coast in the dead of night, pushed out to sea to burn and then disappear. At night, they say that if you listen closely, you can hear the screams of those that didn't make it back to shore. And finally, coming in at our number 1 spot, the Duke of Danzig. And for our most terrifying ghost ship on this list, of course it has to be a brutal and bloodthirsty pirate ship, a privateer that plundered her way across the Caribbean, notoriously in the name of her royal namesake, the Duke of Danzig. This ship's seafaring career was relatively quiet for the first few years of service, mainly acting as more of a letter of marque, a deterrent more so than a private man of war. However, her fate quickly changed after changing command and sailing under the French captain Francois Aregnadour. Now, his intentions were to sail and plunder his way across the 7 seas, and plunder he did from Liverpool to Barbados, capturing and scuttling more ships than he could count on his way. However, despite being a vessel of the French Empire, strangely enough, sometime after late June 1812, the Duke of Danzig just disappeared, although there are several records catching a glimpse of her around Canada, but she was never seen again. After the last mention of her, it was thought that she'd been destroyed by a tropical cyclone or sunk in the night after an encounter with a British frigate. However, As the legend goes, that was not the last of the Duke of Danzig. After the golden age of piracy had been sated, a captain by the name of Napoleon Gallois relayed his records of a French frigate encountering the wreck of the Duke of Danzig drifting listlessly at sea. As his crew witnessed, the ship itself was covered from helm to hull in dried blood, and in staggered rows were the putrefying corpses of her crew, many of which were brutally crucified to the masts or the deck. Strangely enough, there were no signs that she had been in recent battle. In fact, despite the blood, she was pristine, no shot holes, and her sails and rigging intact. After searching the ship, Gallois' crew found a stack of blood-stained papers identifying the captain as the same Francois Aregnadour. And then, as they left, the crew of the frigate set the brig ablaze, forever to be buried at sea, along with her mistress.
Number 5. Wolverine fish. Hugh Jackman, if you're watching this and you like scary stuff, this first one's for you, my dude. In 2021, there were more than 200 new species of just freshwater fish discovered alone. Just freshwater. Hopefully ancistrous wolverine. Okay, that's a pretty badass name. And a badass looking fish. There's no way in hell I'm taking that thing off of a hook with my hands. Are you kidding me? And you wouldn't want to either, because these fishes have strong lateral curved spikes called endontus tucked underneath their gills, which at any time they can extend and jab at their prey with these spiky prong-like claws, hence the name. For those of you who don't know Wolverine, he's an X-Men with claws. It kind of goes hand in hand here, you know? The wolverine fish is actually a catfish, however, that grows up to only about 6 or 7 inches long. They get their name from both the barbed razor-sharp prongs associated with them and the temper and aggression inside of them. Yeah, so like full-blown Wolverine-style anger. Luckily for us, they live in between rocks found so far in the Brazilian river of Rio Xingu in the lower Amazon that I don't think you're gonna swim into any one of these soon. I feel like that's where the scariest fish are, the Amazon. Also, kind of confusing biologists, so many species and names alike but not alike. Catfish, wolf fish, half wolf, half man, X-Men fish. Like every day there's a new fish. Wolverine fish are only herbivores and graze on algae and detritus tucked away deep under rocks, so the likelihood of you just like stepping on one of these are pretty low. Might scare you away from their home, but they won't eat you. Just don't go flipping over any rocks and reaching underneath murky water in the Amazon. That's all I can say for this one. Number 4, alien fish? Well, one magnificent alien fish, Advena magnifica, which translates to magnificent alien, hence the name. No, it's not from outer space or anything, don't panic. Technically, it's not even a fish. This sea sponge literally gets its name because it just looks like E.T. Hey, I didn't name it, they did. To be fair, it does look like E.T. the alien, come on. The long neck, the huge head, the big eyes, it's literally perfect. This year, a new sea sponge was discovered officially. Well, plucked back in 2017, but they're sure now that it's a completely new species. Over 6,000 feet deep in the Pacific Ocean, research team from the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History came upon a mesmerizing seascape. Dr. Chris Ma of the team dubbed the scene, quote, a forest of the weird. The sea sponge rises up from the seafloor to look exactly onto the direction of the current, mouth open, hoping to swallow up some bacteria to eat. That's sick, just an alien sponge sticking their ET heads out, catching the breeze, hoping for some fast food. Doesn't sound like a bad gig. The 2 holes of the sponge that give it its signature ET eyes appearance are clearly visible on the outside of its head. These holes, technically oscules, serve as openings of which the sponge pumps water out of. The sponge is covered in even tinier pores where the water is drawn into the sponge along with tasty bacteria and other small prey. Just sucked in through small chambers and the water's pumped out through a bunch of canals. Cristiana Castello Branco, the researcher who found this deep-sea gray, explains the importance of this discovery by saying, quote, as all of these organisms are intricately connected, by documenting and describing marine biodiversity, we are building a better understanding of life and the impact of humans on Earth. Yeah, 100% we're all connected. Let's give these little dudes some clean water. How about that, people, all right? No more Mountain Dew bottles just thrown into the lake. Pick it up. Number 3, bulldog fish. Catfish, wolverine fish, now bulldog fish. When are we just gonna have a fish, you know? The bulldog fish, or the Xenactinus oryx. That sounds like a Decepticon, doesn't it? Xenactinus oryx? Roll out. Well, it's Autobots. Never mind. This thing can truly teach a new dog some old tricks. Like 90 million years old tricks, because our newest discovery is actually a really old one. Extinct, thankfully. You wouldn't want to haul this thing up in your net. The Dino of the Week blog states that some of the longest bulldog fish ever may have once even measured up to 6 meters long. Yeah, that's like a regular sized shark. The bulldog fish fossils may be quite valuable as well. A fully intact, complete framed specimen sold for about $110,000 at Sotheby's auction house. Is this the reason fish and chips are so expensive nowadays? Like, what's going on here? This scary dude roamed the warm, shallow waters of the Western Interior Seaway that split America in two halves during the Upper Cretaceous period. Distinguished by their heavy, bony skull and armed to the tooth with teeth like a nightmare, last year, Andy Moore, a local fisherman, made a discovery while taking part in a fishing competition in Nebraska. When he brought his kayak over to free his line, he first thought that it was a skeleton of something that had recently died, so he just returned back to his tournament. He contacted the sheriff's department after the tournament, worried, and they got back to him saying it was his lucky day. Dude, imagine just reeling in a 90 million year old fish during a fishing tournament. Like, I hope he won. That's definitely first place, isn't it? Oh, Andy? Oh yeah, caught a 90 millioner. Yeah. Number 2, the barrel eye fish. Tubular eyes, bro. No, seriously, your tubular eyes actually are very rare and also significantly puzzling. Say hello to the barrel eye fish, or the Macropina microstoma from the Opisthoproctus species, meaning backwards in Greek, to signify their uniquely designed flipped up eyes luminously inside, alive in their head, or backwards. Generally directed upwards and back to detect the silhouettes of both predator and prey, although they can move their eyes back to forward. Basically, they have a sunroof above their head that they can look up from inside their own head. Hey, that's pretty tubular, bruh. They can be found deep in tropical waters in the twilight zone, between 600 and 800 meters down. There are fish that gaze upwards through their transparent heads with eyes like mesmerizing emerald orbs. These domes are huge spherical lenses that sit on a pair of long silvery eye tubes, hence its common name. The barrel eye fish has a green tint over their eyes, which even acts as kind of like a sunglasses to help them track down prey in any sort of lighting. There is literally nowhere to hide, even for a bioluminescent fish. Barrel eyes are one step ahead the entire time. After years of only seeing dead, net-caught specimens, in 2021, Bruce Robinson with the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute in California and their high-def cameras finally got a pretty good look at these dudes using remotely operated vehicles. Dude, these are apparently really rare. Side note, is this how fish are evolving? Like their heads are becoming see-through all of a sudden? Because this is terrifying. Like, imagine a shark with a sunroof. Number 1, the snapping shrimp. This little guy, the snapping shrimp, aka the pistol shrimp, aka mussel in the Alphidae family. Sounds like a mafia family, doesn't it? Hey, I'm a pistol shrimp with the Alphidae family, who's asking? This little thing can literally create a sonic boom under the water right before and as it's attacking you. That's not scary at all. It's so fast you literally don't even know what's happening due to the stun alone and how fast it is. You won't see it coming, you might hear it coming. This thing's sound is that big, it creates a sonic boom. We know nothing, Jon Snow. Like, they're apparently found in coral reefs and oyster reefs. These pistol shrimp hit their prey at over 100 kilometers per hour. In doing so, a large air bubble is created, and because of this, Mike Tyson shrimp is so quick with the jab, the following pop is around 200 decibels. It has a punching hand and a claw hand, like a jab and a cross. The sound stuns their prey first and resembles sticks breaking or cracking of a knuckle under the water. But don't panic, not in any lakes or freshwater, they live in tropical seas. They're usually muddy green or orange in color, usually only about that big. Scientists found that actual light is produced when the bubble pops due to the high temperature and pressure under the water. They're the only ones so far that can do this. I mean, this is pretty sick. And also pretty terrifying. The knowledge that fish are starting to learn how to flashbang other fish like they're clearing a room in Call of Duty, dude, that's where I draw the line. I'm not going swimming anymore at all.
Starting us off at number 5, we have Yellow Jack. We're gonna set sail on a weird one to start us off. If you're a flag enthusiast, you might see the editing of this one coming from a mile away, but we'll get there in a minute. So the legend of Yellow Jack starts upon a spice and gold-filled ship preparing to leave the Indies and head back home. The crew was accounted for, the cargo was secure, the captain was feeling Mwah, nice. Then, at the last second, a mysterious figure asked if they had room for one more. Feeling pretty good about their haul, they welcomed this extra pair of helping hands on board. Wrong move. Turns out this was a disreputable lad known as Yellow Jack, with a reputation so abhorrent that the ship was forbidden to enter any port she called upon. For ages the crew sailed from port to port hoping that someone would let them dock, but it never happened. They were forced to endlessly cruise the seas, running lower and lower on supplies. Patience too. Eventually the crew went mad and committed mutiny before they all murdered each other. Some say the ship is still sailing, the ghosts of these sea-locked sailors manning the helm. Someday they may find a port that will take them and they will finally be able to rest. In the meantime, they will sail the seas, infecting other ships with the same madness that Yellow Jack caused. Now this is a spooky, ghostly story in its own right, but it could also be a reference to a different ship killer at the time. Disease. The Yellow Jack is a flag flown by ships infected with plague, cholera, and other nasty, fast-spreading diseases, so Yellow Jack itself could be a metaphor for disease, and ports weren't letting them in because of quarantine procedures. Absolutely fascinating, and it would also make a killer movie. A pirate quarantine body horror. Think The Thing meets Wreck meets Pirates of the Caribbean. Oh damn. Coming in at number 4, we have the Caliuchi, a Chilean ship sailing around an island known for its terrible storms. Shining white sides, 3 masts with 5 sails, blood red. The ship sails independent of any human input. Sure, there's a ghost crew, but the Caliuchi is known for being sentient. The ship has a mind of its own. It'll glide along the water at incredible speeds and is able to submerge and continue navigating underwater, similar to the famous Flying Dutchman. When it passes, folks say you can hear the crew cackling for a brief moment. It's a ship known for the merriment of its ghostly crew. They throw parties often and hop around on one leg. The folks on board often only have one leg because the other is folded behind their back, similar to another Chilean mythological entity. To top off their strange looks and mannerisms, some crew members have backwards faces, terrifying all who lay eyes upon them. Some say the Caliuchi is manned by sailors, both dead and alive, dragged from the depths and snagged off passing ships. Another legend says that the ship is piloted by the souls of the drowned, brought aboard by water spirits and granted the gift of life in exchange for their servitude. Not so sure that's a good deal, you know, life eternal, but you'll always be on a stinky ship? Maybe the parties are just that sick. Merchants who trade with Caliuchi supposedly become very wealthy afterwards, and anyone who has laid eyes upon it wears a crooked smile forever. Again, interesting deal. Lots of money, crooked smile. I guess you could afford a dentist and some plastic surgery at that point. Coming in at number 3, we've got the ghost ship of the Northumberland Strait. Yes, Canadian ghost pirates. That pretty much sums up my career aspirations right there. I don't know if that means I would be pirating software related to ghosts or actually becoming a phantom upon the Northumberland Strait, but I don't really care as long as my title involves the words Canadian, ghost, and pirate. But back to the actual tale at hand. This ghost ship is said to sail when it's on fire within the Northumberland Strait. What is the Northumberland Strait? It is a body of water that separates Prince Edward Island from Nova Scotia and New Brunswick in eastern Canada. Now you all know some Canadian geography. I'm so proud of you. The story dates back over 200 years when people started reporting a beautiful schooner catching fire and being engulfed in flames as people watched from shore. Anyone who has ever attempted a rescue mission finds that the ship completely disappears before they can reach it. Apparently the ship shows up before a northeast wind, forewarning terrible storms. Some say it's just an example of St. Elmo's fire, a rare weather condition involving the ionization of air molecules in order to produce a faint glow, but those who have seen the ship ablaze say that it was much too bright to be explained away like that. The prevailing story is that a pirate made a pact with the devil to protect and hide his treasure, and in return he and his crew would sail forever on the burning ship. A pact was made as the ship was burning down and would soon sink along with the treasure. In the end, folks claim that their fate was revenge for the terrible deeds they had done in their days of piracy, like their own personal floating hell. Coming in at number 2, we have Baron Falkenberg, a tale of lovers scorned, brothers bashed, and dice rolled. This pirate haunts Germany's North Sea and has been for over 600 years. Baron Falkenberg was a relatively wealthy member of high society, planning to propose to the village's most beautiful maiden. Then his long-lost brother returned with newly found riches and proposed to her first. At the wedding, the Baron became so upset with his brother that he clubbed him over the head with a bottle of champagne. Classy. Naturally, the brother dropped dead. Seeing this, his bride ran away, claiming that she'd rather die than be with the Baron. Ouch. So the Baron did what any rational fratricidal maniac would do, and stabbed her in the heart. How romantic. Then he ran away to the beach, where he was accosted by a shady man on a boat. This mysterious figure invited him to the ship where he came from, which was anchored offshore a little ways out. The Baron accepted and rowed his way to the great grey behemoth. Since entering, nobody has seen him disembark, and he's been at sea for centuries. The ship he boarded always seems to be heading due north, and flickers of blue flame. Some passersby claim to have seen the Baron himself playing dice with the devil in order to take back control of his soul. Unfortunately, it appears to be very difficult to win a game of chance against the devil. An additional caveat that can be added is that there are those who will claim that the story of the Baron is also connected to a Norse ghost story. The story tells the tale of a Viking sea captain who stole a magic ring from the gods. As punishment for his crimes, he was turned into a living skeleton covered in fire, condemned to spend the rest of eternity affixed to the mast of a ghostly longship. Whether the two stories are about the same ship, it's hard to say. However, I think we can all agree that a flaming skeleton pirate is pretty badass. And finally at number 1, we have the Flying Dutchman. We saved the most well known for last. The legendary ghost ship is said to glow with ghostly light as it sails the 7 seas. It will attempt to send messages to land or to people long dead if hailed. Unfortunately, nobody really wants to hail this ship, as the sight of it is seen to be a portent of doom. Like most ghostly ships, the Dutchman can never make port and is doomed to sail the oceans forever. It's theorized that the spectral seafarer had been rounding the treacherous Cape of Good Hope when it encountered a sudden storm. The hatches were battened down and the captain swore he would push right through come hell or high water, and it turns out a little bit of both were on the menu. For his recklessness with his ship and crew, the captain was divinely punished. He was condemned to sail the seas for eternity, serving as a warning to other mariners of bad weather and the cost of hubris. Sightings of the Dutchman have been reported since the 18th century, with many notable scallywags and scurvy dogs laying eyes on the ghastly vessel. Even Prince George of Wales described seeing a ship glowing with a strange light. If you see a ship with skeletons dancing in the rigging, steer clear. It might look like fun, but the captain will try to lure other vessels onto the rocks to ensure nobody else can pass the cape. Sheesh. Remind me not to take a long sailing trip.
Number 5. Rose-veiled fairy wrasse. The sea Finnifenma was spotted by John Randall in the early 1990s and was initially thought to be just an adult version of C. rubris quamus, a fish from the Maldives. However, just a couple months ago, a new strain of species was finally caught and analyzed. Though there have been hundreds of fish caught off the coast of the Maldives, this colorful, mesmerizing new addition is the first ever to be formally introduced and recognized as a brand new species. Alright. Welcome to Earth, little buddy. I love this planet. Every day there's something new, eh? This thing is mesmerizing, right? Look at it, it's just so beautiful. Apparently it changes colors as it grows up too. Different year, different color. The rose-veiled fairy wrasses is one of the first species to have its name derived from the local Dihivehi language, with Finnifenma meaning rose, a nod to both its beautiful pink hues and the island's national flower. Ah, we're starting this list off nice and easy. Imagine swimming with these. This is beautiful. Nice little rainbow around you. Of course, us being us, the species being so new and abundant has started making it, of course, at high risk of over-exploitation. Yeah, don't forget what we do to fish. Yeah, humans can be the worst for this planet also. Already talks of commercialization, tasty new dishes, and exotic deep-sea tanks before it's even got a scientific name. That should be a metaphor about how we are, you know? Something so new and precious and we're already craving over it. The beauty of nature, I guess. The discovery is part of the California Academies of Science Hope for Reefs initiative, started in 2016 by a team of marine biologists and deep-sea divers. It was created to explore, explain, and sustain the world's coral reefs by making fundamental breakthroughs in coral reef biology. That's awesome, dude. Okay, so there's like some pure people still out there trying to help. That's beautiful. Alright, one for humanity. Okay, we're trying here. Number 4. The blanket octopus. The blanket octopus gets its name from its female counterpart, the very rarely seen and supersized female blanket octopus. She has a long fleshy cape that wraps around her tentacles. This cape makes the octopus appear larger and more intimidating to predators. Though the female blanket octopus is already large, growing to around 2.5 meters in length, the males only grow up to about 1 inch, weighing in at a monstrous 1 pound. Alright. The caped female growing upwards of 40% bigger in mass and size. 40% his size. Okay, this species is much more interesting now. 40 times bigger than its counterpart? Just a little guy, you know? You got this, little man. That's like us dating a sperm whale. How does he not get lost in that big cape? Hey, soulmates are soulmates, right? In fact, the blanket octopus exhibit one of the most extreme sexual size dimorphisms known in any of the animal kingdoms. That's a really cool fact. Unique love, you know? That's like Donkey and Dragon from Shrek. But on a bleaker note, unfortunately scientists don't think that they live very long. Sad, I know. Like many other octopuses, they are short-lived at approximately 1 to 2 years for females and 3 to 4 years as males. The tiny male drifts through the ocean seeking a mate while protecting their precious reproductive arm tucked away in a sac between their mouth and eye. Males die soon after they mate, while females will continue to live and grow for many months and years longer than the males, spawning around 100,000 eggs which are carried by her under her arms. Blanket octopuses can be found in both tropical and subtropical waters. They apparently are reported to feed on seafloor mollusks and small fishes. It's not fish, eh? Yeah, it's fishes. Yeah, I never knew that. It's fishes. I like that. Blanket octopuses are also immune to venom, like from the Portuguese Man O War, the huge jellyfish. Female blankets actually rip their limbs off and use them as weapons. They use the tentacles of jellyfish to sting other predators for both offense and defense. This is like my new favorite animal. These should be called Joan of Arcs, because that's like the energy I'm getting here. When threatened, the female unfurls her large net-like membranes that spread out like Batman's cape, making her instantly 3 times the size of an already 12-foot body. Gentle giant or limb ripper-offer? You tell me. Number 3. The glass octopus. A rare encounter with a glass octopus has just happened, which is one of the strangest and coolest species that swim these oceans. These science fiction looking dudes have transparent gelatinous bodies, and scientists believe that they have evolved into their elongated shape in order to make itself next to invisible, even when right beside it. That's pretty cool. The only colorful parts on them are their optic nerves, eyeballs, and digestive tract. Yeah, basically like a see-through Game Boy. Remember those? About like 3 times the size of a Game Boy 2 at about 20 inches long. It's likely that these octopuses eat whatever is down there at the depths of the Twilight Zone and Midnight Zone. Yeah, like deep, deep. And cold. Footage of the glass octopus is super new, and before this expedition, scientists had almost no documentation of the animal in the wild. That means they've mostly had to learn about it just by studying remains found in the guts of other predators. But now, thanks to the Schmidt Ocean Institute armed with close-range high-def videos and pictures, scientists and biologists are now able to learn a little bit more about this mysterious ghostly creature. Quote, "The ocean holds wonders and promises we haven't even imagined, much less discovered." Wendy Schmidt, co-founder of Schmidt Ocean Institute. Thanks to a recent expedition in the US Pacific remote islands, the Schmidts led a 34-day trip that brought scientists together from all around the world to document deep-sea creatures on deep seamounts. See, this is what I'm talking about. All the while using a remote-controlled vehicle named Sebastian. I love it. I get it, Little Mermaid, I got you. Scientists observed not 1 but 2 octopuses, adding further to more knowledge and behavior of this elusive species. The glass octopus is considered one of the least studied cephalopods in our ocean. I'm excited. Let's go 2022. So far so good. Great year for fishes. Number 2. The colossal squid. Sometimes called the Antarctic squid or giant cranch squid, or famously known as the Kraken. It's believed to be the largest squid species ever. It's the only member of the Mesonychothelius genus and is only known from a handful of sightings throughout history. Ah yes, the old sea captain's log, huh? The species is confirmed to reach a mass of at least 1,500 pounds, making it the largest known invertebrate on the planet. Biggest one so far is 20 meters. That's like the pitcher's mound to home plate. Yeah. This thing is massive. Though the species has similar anatomy to other squids, it's the only member to display hooks on its arms and tentacles. Okay, that's a little scary. It lives in the Antarctic and is found at depths of the Twilight Zone, like 2,000 meters down. Little is actually known about the creature, what it eats, and what it does all the way down there. Scientists say it's bioluminescence as well, which attracts prey. Look, if this thing was flying instead of swimming, just 1 atmosphere difference, I'm just gonna say it, this thing would be an alien. You know what I mean? I said it. I mean, no wonder it's got a reputation for swallowing up ships by pirates. The first specimens were spotted in 1925, but in the early 2000s, fishermen got lucky and they pulled up the largest colossal squid ever found. It's now on display at the Museum of New Zealand. Kinda sad that when we see these beautiful things, the first thing we think is to yank them out of the water. I like the underwater cameras and freedivers Blue Planet style, just swimming down there with krakens. Okay, maybe not. Yank it up, boys. Get it up, that thing's horrifying. And the #1 spot, the blood belly comb jelly. Sounds like a magical elixir. From the family Lampictenidae, this specimen was first caught and studied by George Matsumoto, the marine biologist at the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, who discovered the blood belly jelly in 2003. Now we're sure these things weren't discovered on like one of Jupiter's moons or something already in the 30s. We're sure of that. Cause that thing's blinking like a you-know-what. Not many of these things have actually been caught though. I've never seen anything like this before. Brilliant and then seemingly electric. The bloody belly comb jelly comes in different shades of red as well. The sparkling display on the outside comes from light reflecting and refracting off tiny transparent hair-like cilia. Basically this thing is like a swimming light bright. Remember those? Light brights from the 90s? This thing is like the alive version of that. Of course, alongside its mystic nature, it also poops sparkles. Seriously, like a little alien unicorn. That's neat, right? Its name comes from its ruby red color. While it's pretty much invisible from underneath its belly, from above and in front it lights up like the 4th of July, luring predators in with its mesmerizing patterns. Red is nearly invisible in the deep sea, so the vibrant crimson that gives the comb jelly its name is actually helping it hide. Blood bellies are technically ctenophores, not true jellyfish. Many comb jellies have caloblasts lining their tentacles which work like glue instead of venom. Upon touch, a spiral filament automatically bursts out and releases this sticky glue stuff. Once a fish is unable to swim away, the comb jelly reels in its tentacles and brings the food to its mouth. Okay, so this thing just became absolutely terrifying again. The deep dark sea, we gotta respect it. How insects and how jellyfish eat scares the out of me. I can't explain it. Watch it for yourself.
Coming in at 5, Kieran Crowan. Kieran Crowan was a large sea monster hailing from Scottish Gaelic folklore, which, according to an old saying, was so large it fed on 7 whales. I quote, 7 herrings, a salmon's fill. 7 salmon, a seal's fill. 7 seals, a whale's fill. 7 whales, a Kieran Crowan's fill. Oh man. Now, while its immense size poses a threat to humankind, it prefers to toy with its prey first. It hides its enormous figure by shrinking down to the size of a silverfish. Then when fishermen catch it in their nets, the monster transforms back into a gigantic beast and swallows the fisherman whole. Nasty. In at 4, Ningen. The Ningen is an Arctic humanoid life form that inhabits the icy waters of the Antarctic, and has reportedly been observed on a handful of occasions by crew members of whaling ships. The Ningen are said to be completely white in colour with a length of around 20 to 30 meters. Crew members who have spotted the life form have described it as having a human-like shape, often with legs, arms, and even 5-fingered hands. So creepy. Now, the only visible facial features are the eyes and the mouth, and on one occasion crew members approached the creature, believing it to be a foreign submarine. However, they were wrong, and it quickly became apparent that it was non-man-made, and that it was alive. The creature disappeared relatively quickly, thankfully. Now, most of the sightings seem to occur at night, which makes the creature far more difficult to photograph. However, in pictures that have been taken, the Ningen mostly just looks like ice, so their skin is said to be smooth, almost human-like. No believable pictures have ever been taken, perhaps because the Ningen don't exist, or perhaps it's because of a large cover-up by the government. What do you guys think though? Coming in at 3, Kraken. The Kraken is a legendary sea monster of massive proportions and is described as resembling a giant octopus or squid, and is said to be capable of enveloping entire ships in the grasp of its tentacles and dragging them beneath the depths of the cold dark ocean. Now, the Kraken for years has been spoken of in tales told by sailors, as well as featured in various works of fiction since the 13th century, and continues to remain popular even today in works like Clash of the Titans. The Kraken is said to roam off the coast of Norway and Greenland and will attack and and destroy any vessel that crosses its path. Now, since the late 18th century, the Kraken has been depicted in a variety of different ways. However, it's primarily drawn as a large octopus-like creature and has often been based on sailors' observations of a giant squid. Scarier still, the Kraken is also depicted to have spikes on its suckers. Yeah, that shit will f you up. In earlier depictions, the Kraken was more crab-like and far less intimidating than it is today. But the biggest takeaway? Steer clear of the ocean for very many reasons, but mostly steer clear of the Kraken. That's all I'm saying. Coming at 2, Hydra. Also known as Mother Hydra, this Lovecraftian monster is said to resemble a colossal deep one, and is an enormous humanoid creature with a fish-like face, flapping gills and Piscean skin. She forms the Holy Trinity with Father Dagon and Great Cthulhu himself. 3 entities are worshipped as gods by the aquatic race. Now, there is much debate as to whether Hydra is a great old one or if she is simply a massively overgrown deep one. Now, it should be noted that Hydra and Dagon were both entrusted by Cthulhu to be guardians of his daughter Cthulhu, a duty which they perform in one of the Deep One's mighty submarine cities beneath the North Atlantic. Pretty damn cool. And finally, coming in at number 1, Leviathan. Leviathan, not to be confused with the roller coaster at Canada's Wonderland, is a sea serpent monster of immense size and first appeared in Jewish belief, referenced in the Hebrew Bible in the Book of Job, the Book of Isaiah, and the Book of Amos. It is described as a primeval monster defeated by the god Hadad. And draws comparisons to dragon and world serpent narratives. Now, the Leviathan of the Middle Ages is a little different, and was used as an image of Satan, endangering both God's creatures and God's creation by threatening it with the waters of chaos. Leviathan is classified as one of the 7 princes of hell, and is the demon of envy. More interesting still, Leviathan represents the element of water. The element of water in Satanism is associated with life and creation, something that Leviathan seeks to destroy.
Number 5 on this list is Sinkhole Sam. The legend of Sinkhole Sam originated many years ago in Kansas. Sinkhole Sam is said to live in Inman Lake, or as the locals call it, the sinkhole. It's believed to be a 15-foot long serpent-like creature that is as round, and I quote, as an automobile tire. The people who claim that this serpent was 15 feet and round like an automobile tire are Albert Newfield and George Rager, 2 witnesses of the beast. These men are some of the many people who have stumbled upon this creature and have spoken out about it. Based on the reports, people believe that Sinkhole Sam is a type of prehistoric serpent that has managed to survive over the years. Now, back before Kansas was even colonized, there were lakes and rivers all over the terrain, making it a perfect spot for an animal like this to survive. As time went on, the area dried up and locals believe that Sinkhole Sam took up residence in Inman Lake. As the years have passed though, the sightings of Sam at Inman Lake have been fewer and farther between. However, the sightings of a similar creature at the Kingman State Lake have grown. This lake isn't too far from Inman Lake either, only 50 miles. 50 miles is certainly a long distance to go, but maybe not for a massive serpent like Sam. Sinkhole Sam, in my opinion, is one of the most likely creatures to actually exist. Unlike other sea beasts that are very far from any living animals that we have in our world, Sinkhole Sam, from most accounts, is just a big snake. I think it's super possible that someone has spotted a massive snake over the years in that lake, and through word of mouth, the story has been exaggerated over the time to become the legend of Sinkhole Sam. Now, if Sam is real, then we should all be in the clear, because even though a 15-foot serpent may be terrifying, there have been no reported attacks from Sinkhole Sam on humans since the legend began. Number 4 on this list is Leviathan melville. This ancient beast is aptly named after the Leviathan due to its incredible size. This is a monstrous whale that grew from 45 feet to 60 feet in length. It has the largest teeth from any animal used to eat the world has ever seen, reaching a length of 1.18 feet. Their heads were 10 feet long and their jaws were absolutely massive. Similar to Megalodon, these creatures are long extinct and lived roughly 12 million years ago. Also similarly to Megalodon, they had the exact same diet as the massive shark, whales. That's right guys, this massive whale ate other smaller whales. Also, because it was competing for the same food source as Megalodon, it's not unrealistic to think that those 2 creatures would have fought several times. And before I go any further about this beast, comment down below who you have in a fight, Megalodon or this Leviathan of whales. I want to know who you guys got. Anyways, over the years we've seen many legends about massive whales that were extremely aggressive. Moby Dick is one of the most famous stories of all time and features a massive massive whale. This creature, however, would have put Moby Dick to shame and potentially would have even had it for lunch. Also, after it was finished eating Moby Dick, it would have happily eaten Captain Ahab and completely demolished his whaling ship. A lot of other entries on this list have had some reported sightings and witnesses, but this one we have real fossils to prove its actual existence. I've personally always been a fan of whales. In fact, an orca whale is my favorite animal in the whole world, but making an orca whale 60 feet with massive teeth is what we have here, and that might be a bit too much for me if I'm being honest. Number 3 on this list is Ninjin. Ninjin are very strange mythical creatures that have only come into the limelight very recently. The rumors and legends of these creatures have largely taken place in Japan. Japanese whale research boats that are sent to the Arctic waters have reported seeing these massive 20 to 30 meter long creatures that are completely white swimming through the ocean. Now when I first heard that, I thought that these things might just be big whales, but their shape is unlike anything that we've ever seen before. These creatures are said to look almost human, with witnesses saying that they saw massive legs and arms coming from the beast. They also have eyes and a mouth, but not many other facial features from the reports. For just over the last decade, stories about Ninjin in the Antarctic waters have circulated throughout Japan. One of the most famous was when crew members on the deck of a ship saw what they thought was a submarine in the distance, but when they approached it, realized the creature was alive and watched as it dived quickly underwater. There are some photos that have surfaced on the internet, but nothing that can fully substantiate the claims of this creature's existence. It is also currently unknown if there's only one of these creatures or if there are several of them swimming around the seas. This beast, unlike some of the other creatures that we've talked about, is not just a bigger version of an already existing animal. It isn't just a big snake or a big shark, it's a completely different entity entirely. This makes me think that it would be harder for somebody to confuse a big whale with a creature like this, because a whale doesn't look anything like a Ninjin. Hopefully more sightings and evidence can come to light soon, and we can get a definitive confirmation if this thing is real or not. Number 2 on this list is the Oklahoma octopus. This mythical octopus is said to inhabit some of the bigger lakes in Oklahoma, like Lake Thunderbird, Oolaga Lake, and Lake 10 Killer. The sightings indicate that this is a very large, aggressive octopus that we wouldn't want to mess with. Many deaths in these lakes have been linked to this octopus, or octopi if there are multiple of them. What's very strange about this creature, and what makes a lot of people skeptical, is that typically octopi don't live in freshwater areas. They're capable of doing it for a short time, but they never live there for extended periods. That being said, there have still been multiple sightings and reports of this creature living in these lakes. It's said to be the size of a horse and has a reddish-brownish skin tone to it. It eats what any other octopus would eat, but has a tendency to kill humans in its area. The reasoning behind this is unknown though, because it doesn't actually eat the humans, but only drowns them. Potentially the octopus feels threatened by humans swimming in its water and is very territorial. There's no physical evidence proving the existence of this creature, but the rate of drownings in these 3 lakes that I mentioned earlier, they're far higher than anywhere else in the area. That statistic, along with the numerous sightings from fishermen and swimmers, have locals believing in the legend of the Oklahoma octopus. Number 1 on this list is Organism 46B. Organism 46B is believed to be a massive 33-foot long squid-like creature that was said to have 14 different tentacles. This thing lived in Vostok Lake, which is a subglacial lake located under 2 entire miles of ice. This creature has the ability to animate its legs after they've been amputated, it's capable of shape-shifting, it's extremely intelligent and also extremely hostile, and it has the ability to immobilize its prey with a toxin that it could spray up to 150 feet. We've only actually known about this creature for a few years. Although the Russians initially established an Antarctic base on top of Vostok Lake in 1957, they actually weren't aware that there was a lake beneath them until 1974, and then they weren't able to get to the lake until 2012. It was only after that that they discovered Organism 46B. After they drilled all the way through the ice and got to a point where they could send divers down there, they discovered this creature. Sadly, the discovery was a deadly one though. Dr. Anton Padalka, a researcher at the site, is quoted saying, "He tread water wearing a blissful smile as the organism approached him. We watched helplessly as it used its arms to tear off its head, then popped its remains in its mouth. It was as if it had hypnotized him telepathically." This ability to completely lull its prey into a sense of calm is apparently what this creature's venomous spray is capable of doing to people. Padalka had some more interactions with this beast, but it didn't take long before the Russian government came into the mix and sent a specialized team into Vostok Lake to extract the organism. The fact that any of this news even made it to the public is pretty marvelous, considering the Russian government wanted to keep it under wraps as much as they could. Hopefully there aren't any more of these dangerous beasts lurking in the subglacial waters waiting to strike.